sometimes a little bit noisy. There we go. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock on this part of the world anyways. Welcome to our diversity and inclusion in open source community call. If you don't already, if you haven't already, our diversity and inclusion in open source. So I realized that I had a window open there where I could hear myself. If you haven't already, please introduce yourself on the Etherpad. Just under the last person on line 34. Let us know where you're coming from, what you're interested in learning on this call, and how to find you. This is the last call. I'm going to be using Google Hangouts, so I appreciate everyone's patience with the maximum allotted amount. I haven't had enough time to research an alternative, but next time we will have that. Is anyone on this call who, I mean, we've only had 2, but if this is your first call or if you'd like to introduce yourself and you're in the Hangouts, is there anyone that wanted to do that? Welcome, Alberto. Welcome, Akshita. You're from Outreachy. Welcome. Nice to see you turn up. Hi, Michael. Awesome. So as you're reading the introductions there, please just take a look down to what we're calling the collaboration zone right now. There's what we heard from people is they really need to find others to help or to get help. And so you'll see a couple of requests for help, one from Equitable Tech, which is actually a fork of the Open Hatch project, if you remember that, to teach open source. And they're working, they're looking for facilitators in the Houston area, but I think also if you're interested in this project, reach out to this person. They couldn't make, Alberto, you were able to make the call today. That's awesome. The Mozilla Festival on line 78 is looking for a diversity and inclusion volunteer. So this is an opportunity to contribute to the accessibility of the Mozilla Festival, which is already kind of cutting edge in this area, and for a maximum of 30 hours over 4 or 5 months. The volunteer selected will also get a stipend for travel and accommodation to attend the festival, which in many of our cases has been life-changing. So definitely share that with your networks if you know of anyone that might be interested. We have, so when you say you can help with something, don't forget to put your name next to it. We can try and match up your color, but for people who come through here afterwards, so there's people watching on streaming, but we also get, we had over 60 people watch this after the fact, so definitely add your name if you want to help and how to get a hold of you. That might just be a Twitter handle, or you can leave your name with me if you're worried about leaving something on the Etherpad. And Emma, I think that's you who can help with questions about Bugzilla. Yeah, our Mozilla bug tracker. Please also add your name, any blog posts you want to share about your work in the community. So there's one that I've shared about what we learned about gender identity in open source. And finally, under nonverbal updates on line 96, increasing Rust's reach. There's a great initiative by the Rust project. I'm just going to change the color here to be more inclusive. To bring in more inclusive contribution. Last year it was really successful. If you're interested or you know someone that's interested in learning Rust and receiving mentorship to do so and participating in, I think there's a Rust event associated, that it's a great opportunity. So please do share with your networks. All right, so I'll encourage you all to add your, if you, on this call or in future, to add your own topics. Anyone is welcome to present on this call, and to encourage others to do the same, or to reach out to me if you have thoughts on who could speak. And so moving into our agenda, I'm super excited to have Andrew from the Choral Project here. Andrew's going to talk to us a little bit about this amazing, inspiring project around inclusive commenting. I'm not doing it justice in my introduction, so I will skip over to Andrew and ask you to take it away.
Terrific, thank you. Welcome everyone. So my name is Andrew Lisowski. I'm the project lead of the Choral Project. So the Choral Project is a Mozilla Foundation project. We have 5 different funders as foundations. We were founded originally in collaboration with the New York Times and the Washington Post. And what we do is we build open source community tools and practices to help journalists get closer to the communities that they serve. That can help make journalism better, make society better, and include more voices and experiences into the conversation and into journalistic practice. So a big part of what we do is, as Emma sort of referred to, is we do have an open source comments tool that is a lot more better and inclusive than others out there, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. But it isn't only that. We also have another tool called Ask, and we have a series of strategy guides as well. I'll talk about those briefly as I go along. So a few notes about what inclusion means to us as a team. So first of all, well, the first place to start is to start with the team. I was the first full-time hire on the team, and the beginning position that we had to take was that we had to include a diverse range of experiences, including the bodies that people inhabit within the team. And so from the beginning, we always knew that it had to be a diverse team making this, because we're looking at including other voices. In other words, if we can't model the communities that we're looking to within the team ourselves, we're much more likely to fail. So that meant making sure that there were members of our team, core members of our team, who have experienced online harassment in different fields and know what that is and really think hard about that. And also about the diversity of people within the team itself. So right now we're a software team. There's 7 of us, and only 2 straight white, only 2 are white male. Actually, only 1 is straight white male. And so within that, we're very conscious of that fact. But this is always a continual task, and we can always do better. But it's something we're always very aware of. When we look to hire, we use Textio, which is a really terrific tool that can help debias the language you use. The last ad that we created in Textio had a perfect score of 100 in there, and we also work very hard to make sure that we have a diverse range of candidates for any job that we then hire for. So once we have the team, it's then about creating a team atmosphere of inclusion and acceptance, and that's really key. One of the first things that we did, so the first thing I did was hire an amazing community manager, Sudette Harry, and the 2 of us, we wrote a code of conduct for a team that didn't even exist yet, because we knew we had to establish from the beginning some baselines of this is the kind of protection, understanding, and space that we want to create. We also created a guide of what would happen if any of us are targeted for the work we're doing, including a what to do if you're doxxed guide, which thankfully hasn't happened yet, but we're aware that that could happen at any time, because really from the beginning we knew we had to model the threats that might come and take them seriously. That also means as well for us consistently researching and understanding about the different kinds of voices that are being excluded from the conversations. So that means user interviews with people who are pushed out of, silenced from, marginalized within social media and other online engagement platforms. It means talking to leading accessibility experts. We had a consultant early on who is a leading technology expert who's blind and really helps us form our strategies around screen readers. We always look to comply with the Ally guidelines around all of our designs and code. Also, we found that as we looked into the different research, there was a real lack of intersectional studies, especially around behavior in online platforms and comment sections. So we funded one. And so we've been working with Meredith Clark at the University of Virginia on women of color and gender non-binary people of color focused on comment sections, in particular around journalism. By the way, I'll put links to a lot of this into the Etherpad as soon as I finish. And that also means designing for inclusion. Now, we have more than 30 years of online community research now that we can look at. So really just launching and saying we'll learn when people abuse on this in the space is just an unethical stance at this stage with technology. We know that this is the way that people are going to use certain kinds of dialogue and technology, so we have to design against it from the beginning. So for us, that meant from the launch of our beta, from the very beginning, we launched with a mute button. We launched with sophisticated abuse reporting mechanisms and ways to be able to see when things start to go wrong with the conversation. That wasn't something to build later. That wasn't something to come after we've got the basic functionality in. This is basic functionality for community design. Whenever we're designing and thinking about a new feature, we always start with how could this feature be used to harass someone, to abuse someone, to stalk someone, to attack someone. And we really think hard about that from the beginning and make sure we have a diverse user testing group to challenge some of the biases we may miss. And that also means we've been working with Google Jigsaw on machine learning pieces to help identify abuse ahead of time. And that means being aware of algorithmic biases and really thinking hard about and testing out the models to understand what are the biases in the system and to what extent can the algorithm be used to silence and push voices out as well. And that also means tracking the kinds of slang used by hate groups to include in our suggested banned word and phrases list that we supply to all the communities using our tools. Now, we do all of this and more, and that's really key to our work. But we also understand that the tools can only take us so far. We're building decentralized, privacy-focused community platforms, which means that we don't get to make decisions for the ways in which people are running it. It means that it has to only be those who are running the space. They are the ones who are going to be defining the strategies. So we need to help them with that as well. The biggest issues we see in online comments and community is that the trolling happens as a symptom, but the trolling isn't the disease. The disease is really the idea of a lack of strategy, a lack of resources, which create a vacuum that enable abuse and silencing behavior to fill that. So sometimes that means working with news organizations to encourage them not to run comments and community on certain topics that we see are highly likely to become abusive. And that's why we built Ask as a different kind of engagement tool. So we worked with the Spotlight team on the Boston Globe, for example, who were looking at having a comments and community around an investigation they were doing on racism in Boston. And we said to them, we strongly recommended they don't do comments and community around this unless they have experienced community managers and they have a history of their own community being able to self-police around issues of that nature. They don't. And so we encourage them to use a different kind of engagement and interaction to encourage people to share stories, but not in a way that made them more likely to be targeted based on their presumed ethnicity, race, political leanings, or anything else. And I'll put a link of what that solution looked like into the Etherpad. It also means trying to train community managers to only make promises they know they can keep and to think more carefully about the threats to the health of the community that might occur and really plan ahead of time of how to mitigate those. And also to be aware of the emotional labor of moderation itself by their community moderators and to be aware of the risks of secondary trauma that can occur from being exposed to difficult, violent, abusive behavior. It is a small number of people, or rather a small percentage of people, I should say, who act in this way. If a community creates a structure which enables that behavior and rewards that behavior, just even by negligence, as many online communities do, then that behavior will increase and also will push out any other kinds of dialogue and conversation. We see this happening over and over again. So we do not believe that our community tools can stop people being horrible on the internet. It won't remove racism from the world. These are all bigger problems than the internet itself. However, we do believe that the tools that we build, if when strategically deployed and done thoughtfully and intentionally, can help those who are managing communities minimize the impact, reduce the visibility, reduce the volume, and create spaces where communities can be more healthy and more productive and more supportive of each other. So that's the work that we do on an ongoing basis. As I say, I'll drop links into the Etherpad, including our technical documentation in running and using the tools. In the last year, Ask, our tool for gathering stories and sharing them back out in galleries, that one was used by 17 newsrooms. Talk, our comments platform, that's now being used in 18 different news organizations around the world, in 7 countries, in 5 languages, I think, right now. And that's going to be 25 within a month or so. So we're seeing really great take up, and really we feel like our work has just begun. So thank you for letting me present, and I would love to answer any of your questions.
Great, thank you so much. That was a lot, and thank you for including links so we can read further. There are a few questions here. So one of the things you said is that that we have all this research about abuse, and that to wait until someone is abused or we receive abuse is unethical. Which is a really interesting approach, because in open source, especially in governance and our code of conducts, that's often like our approach to things. And I'm wondering, like, how have people reacted to that stance and like even strictness so far? Like, has there been any feedback?
I haven't heard any feedback from that stance in itself. I mean, we believe that we know that online abuse is something that online communities are likely to suffer. And therefore, to do nothing is not a neutral stance. It is to say that you do not care about this behavior, and to say that it is not your focus and your priority. In the same way as any other kind of diversity initiative or inclusive initiative or anything else. So for us, it never really felt like a controversial stance. It really just felt like saying, if we know these are problems, anybody who is trying to deal with community knows these are problems. However, you could, the Daily Stormer could take our tools and run it on as a far right Nazi white supremacist site. They could take our tools and use them. They are open source. We are aware that we cannot control how the tools themselves are used. What we can do is try to put in certain kind of designs and biases to make it easier to create a more productive community if you are strategically aligned with that.
And is this technology available? And I apologize if you said so, but I didn't catch it for people in their communities. Like, is there WordPress plugins, those sorts of things, where people can take advantage of this technology?
So we have a WordPress plugin, but the one issue is hosting. So you still need to host it somewhere. There is a one-click Heroku setup on our GitHub, which I'll post a link to as well. And so you could set it up on Heroku and run it there. At this stage, Mozilla is not able to offer any kind of SaaS or hosting product of it. So you need to set up hosting yourself. And we have very detailed technical documentation to help you do that. We do have a hosting partner for larger organizations, but their pricing model means that they can't really offer it for small blogs or small organizations in any meaningful way. That's something we're looking to address at the moment.
Awesome. If anyone else has comments or questions for Andrew, line 147 on the Etherpad is the place to put it. I'll give you one more question here, Andrew. Someone asks if you have any info or studies on robots propaganda lists or inflaming comment sections.
Sure. So there's certainly is a growth in the idea of state actors being involved in comment discussion and conversation, and as well as bots and other things. We haven't really seen any bot traffic so far for any of the newsrooms using our tools, apart from one spam bot got through, and then we set up a plugin which actually squashed that, and we haven't seen spam bots coming back so far. In terms of propagandists, or it really depends as to whether you're talking about state actors or you're talking about individual propagandists, how you're defining that. The one thing for us is that what we're creating is decentralized platforms. Being Mozilla, that's obviously a core thing that we believe in. What that means is it makes it a lot less efficient. You haven't got the network scale of something like Facebook or Twitter, where things can go viral and jump around multiple languages. Every instance of Talk is its own separate instance and identity, and can run its own features and it's a whole plugin architecture. They can run their own plugins, their own setup, and the data is in no way connected to any other install of Talk. So in other words, if you have 20 different news organizations on Facebook, they could all be hit by the same Facebook post. However, you would have to go in 20 times into comment sections. That's not impossible for a state actor with vast resources, but it just raises the obstacles. There have been studies on misinformation, disinformation, in particular on social media platforms. I can track a couple of those down and put links in.
Awesome. And I think that is the last question, other than how to follow along with your work in progress. Is there a repo, or what is the best link to follow along with the Choral Project in future?
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I should have said that. So you can follow us on Twitter, of course, at Choral Project. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. If you go to choralproject.net, there's a newsletter subscribe box within there. And also, of course, you could follow the repos and other things too. But those are the most direct ways. And if you have any questions, you can email me. You can just email support@choralproject.net. I'd be delighted to continue the conversation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for sharing all of that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And yeah, so as Andrew said, you can follow up in the ways that he said. If you have any questions, definitely do reach out. I think being able to create more inclusive discussion on the internet is a goal that we all share. The next topic is debiasing code reviews, and I'd like to introduce you to Emma, the other Emma. I'm the other Emma sometimes. We're each other's Emma. I'd like to introduce you to the bug master at Mozilla, who's going to take us through some blind review. Take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, good morning, all. I'm Emma Humphreys, Bugmaster at Mozilla, and I'm going to introduce blind code reviews. The background on this is last summer, a group of us were in an experiment using design thinking processes to say, what can we do to improve diversity and inclusion and participation in open source? And one thing we kept coming back to was a recent study on GitHub on analyzing acceptance of pull requests on GitHub. Now, if you're not familiar with how a interaction on GitHub works, is usually as an open source project, a member of the community will fork the project's code on GitHub, make changes to it, and then submit those changes in the form of what's called a pull request. Looking at acceptance based on the gender of the person who is submitting the pull request, what the researchers found was that given a person's identity as a woman, and I'm using woman in a very broad sense, it was more likely that their code that a pull request was accepted. But the gating factor on this was whether or not they were identifiable as a woman. If they were identifiable as a woman from their submission on the pull request, it was less likely that their pull request was accepted. So it was sort of what this was illustrating was sort of the situation where you have to be twice as good to get accepted. So the quality of code, the quality of pull requests coming from women was much higher. Higher. So we're looking at this and so what can we do to work around that problem? And we remembered another story that we learned from the 1980s around orchestra, symphony orchestra auditions. It used to be that if you auditioned for an orchestra, you would walk out on stage. You would be highly visible. Your gender, your presentation would be visible to everyone. You would perform your audition piece, then they would decide whether or not they would accept your audition. Well, what they found is that basically that these auditions, the acceptance rates were highly biased towards male-appearing people. They did a simple thing. They had the performer auditioning do it behind a screen with a carpet laid out to dampen footsteps so you couldn't hear if the person's wearing brogues or heels or stilettos. And the acceptance rate for auditions for women went up significantly. So what we find is if you can hide identity about the person submitting a code review or auditioning, then it's much more likely that the submission will be accepted on its merits and not who they are. In open source, it's not just whether or not what your gender is that controls this. It's where you're from, what your history is. Are you an insider or outsider to the project? I mean, we discriminate against people whose primary language is PHP just as much as we discriminate against people whose race or ethnicity may not be the same as the majority of the people in the project. So we decided to take to implement this as a plugin using the web extensions architecture that started landing in Firefox 53. What this plugin does, and since I'm having to do this presentation on Chrome and not in Firefox, I'm not going to try to give you a live demo of it. But if you install this plugin and you look at a request for a code review in Bugzilla or in GitHub, you'll find that the identity of the person requesting the code review has been obfuscated. Then, so you don't know who this person, you don't have any identifying information about this person other than if you can recognize them from the code that they're writing. And what we want to do with this, and we are working with the Open Innovation team on, is to see if blinding code reviews will make it will increase acceptance from people who are normally outsiders to open source projects. So I have 3 links below. One is a link to the extension itself. I encourage you to install it and experiment with it. The second is a link to our source code on GitHub. So this is an open source project, and we gratefully will accept your pull request to it if you find bugs or enhancements that you want to work. Right now, the blind code reviews mechanism works on pull requests in Bugzilla, Mozilla org, and GitHub. If there are other bug trackers and code review tools that you would like to see this work on, adding support for that would be gratefully welcome and accepted. Third is an introduction to the problem that we're trying to solve with blind code reviews. And that's a blog post from earlier last month that appeared on the Mozilla blogs. So thank you for your time. If there's questions, I'll have to look back on the Etherpad to see if there's questions. I'm happy to accept them.
Thanks, Emma. There is one question actually that I put, and I encourage other people to add theirs. Like, what kind of feedback have you had so far from this add-on? I mean, based on like the initial, I know a few people might be using it already. Has there been feedback? Is there maybe any type of feedback you're looking for as well from people who might be testing this?
Okay. Yes, so the feedback we got so far is that that one of the things is that we need the ability to sort of be smart about when we obfuscate this. There are going to be some members who are doing code reviews who want to actively encourage newcomers to the community or people from other unrepresented groups, and they want to say, well, hey, I actually want to see and review contributions from an underrepresented group so that I can, center them in the reviews. So we have a huge code base on Firefox, for example, and reviewers are a scarce resource. And so some reviewers may want to say, look, I have a scarce resource and I want to use it to elevate people. So, so that's one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten.
Great. So I don't see any other questions there. I know that I have this app installed. I'm going to try and, or add-on installed, try and give it a...
Right. Our Tyler asked if there are links to what Emma was referring to somewhere in here, and I'm assuming is that my stuff and not other Emma's. Our Tyler, if you're looking at lines 165 to 177 are the links for the...
Right. That's right. Yes. And if you wanted to add questions now or later, I know that if the last call is any indication, a lot of people watch this afterwards. I will check back on the Etherpad for questions, so feel free to add these after the call as well. Thank you, Emma.
You're welcome.
So we have 2 more topics here, and potentially room for another if anyone wanted to speak to their work. This next topic is about CHAOSS Diversity and Inclusion Metrics Working Group. For those of you that are not familiar with the CHAOSS project, you can find a link on 187. And I'm not going to speak to that, and I don't speak for the CHAOSS project, but I've been working closely with them on some diversity work that I would love to surface with you right now. Some background on for the work that I'm doing and Mozilla's been doing is that last year we spent 3 months doing a lot of research in our communities to understand what we even mean when we say, when we try and understand diversity, inclusion, open communities. Like, what is diversity on a regional scale? What is diversity of language? How can we talk about diversity in a global sense and still understand what we mean? And so we did a lot of qualitative research, interviewing people in their own languages, in various levels of technology access. And we also looked at our data and took a quantitative approach. And that was very hard. And maybe this is hard in your communities as well, because what we realized was that we were storing data in different ways. We were asking the same question in different ways and therefore getting slightly different answers. And we didn't really have a standard that would really help us understand where we were and whether or not any of the steps we were making to be more inclusive were actually working. Right, and so I was very excited last year to see the Chaos Project working to do, pardon me, I have a resident cold, working to understand what community health is. And again, I won't speak to the entire project. There's a link there. A number of really smart people are trying to figure out how we can get better at measuring community health, of which diversity inclusion is central. And so recently, very recently, newborn, there's a diversity inclusion working group link. If you wanted to follow along with the work there, it's on line 188. And so a number of us that care about this work are working together to hopefully help Chaos have a better approach to this, or basically to innovate for that approach. So in that area, I have 4 questions that I'm hoping to learn from you. And again, for those of you that are on the call later, I'd love it if you were to answer some of these questions. So I mentioned that how we were starting to look at diversity. The first question is, how are you currently understanding and measuring diversity, if you are in your community? So in line 193, if there's any way at all right now in your communities that you are attempting to understand your diversity, would be very interested and helpful to this group to understand what that is that you're already doing. The second question is, do you have any existing best practices or standards for improving diversity through inclusion? So are there things that you've already tested or built or can speak to that would help others? And that maybe be interesting. The third question is around tools and software. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the FOSS Heartbeat, but it's something developed by Sage Sharp. Mozilla helped sponsor that last year, that looks at the sentiment in repositories. So, and we're going to be working with that a bit more this year. And also Grimoire Labs, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, Turgia, are examples of software designed to help us measure and understand communities. Are there others that you're aware about or are under development? So awesome, somebody's linked there. And what practices for handling, maintaining, and visualizing data do you currently follow? For example, thresholds for when data is visualized for a given demographic. And that last question is something that's really important to me. I'm trying to better understand how we, if we're going to, I think we need to ask ourselves some hard questions about, if we have data, what are the ethical and measures by which we visualize data, right? And so thresholds, one way of thinking about that. Consent to your data being used that way is another way. So I'm very interested in this area as well. So this is more just a flag, and I'm interested in your responses here, that this work is happening and will be reported back on in coming months. So if you have any questions, you can add those on 202. If you have time to answer my questions, you can add those on the lines indicated. Awesome. So the comments there that Chaos is not doing this for itself right now, but I'm very interested in what others have to say. So that's right. We're definitely working on that right now. Chaos is working on that, and it's pretty exciting. And there's a link there on 197. We'll check that out after this call. And so the next topic, best practices in collaborative environment. Akshita, are you still there?
Yes, hello.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you so much. I would like to introduce myself first.
Please do.
I'm an outreach applicant for this round for diversity and inclusion, and this was completely new topic for me, and it actually relates to my field. So I got really involved with the project, and it was really interesting. So while I was working with this project, I got to know about other girls who were participating with me and the problems they were facing, as mostly they were newcomers like me. So I thought if it would be a good practice if I could block something out and help them also out for undoing the mistakes I was doing during the whole process. So this is the whole blog and a repo about this. So actually the topic other Emma discussed about the blind reviews. I can relate this to my project. I also work in artificial intelligence, and it is in my country, like the blind reviews. If we follow blind reviews, there can be a lot much improvement in the in internships and jobs and all. So I actually faced this diversity while I was searching for internships, and then I came to know about outreach and how they were. It was open source practice, and how this project diversity and inclusion was, and so about the and also I would like to discuss about the visualization part, about the data maintaining part. As an AI, the main problem is of data set only, and how you can maintain it, how you can visualize the data set, how you can document everything so that you don't forget every step and all. So these were the topics I would like to discuss. I would like to discuss in this blog. Sorry if I missed something else.
So the blog is on line 206. This color is really, I'm just going to white out the color so people can see that better. So this is your experiences at Outreach. Now, you mentioned the Outreachy program. Did you want to tell this group in case they don't know about the Outreachy program, or did you want me to just drop a link here, depending on your comfort?
I can tell about the Outreachy program.
Sure.
So, thank you. Outreachy program is for outreach. I participated in diversity and inclusion for Outreach Mozilla for this round, and I solved almost I solved almost 4 PRs, and 2 were for visualizing dataset. One was for recently question asked about gender identity and age, how there was a difference in about asking gender in age groups like 9. There was 19 and 13 friends, and I also submitted a PR for false heartbeat repository. So I think I covered.
Great, thank you. I also, for people that aren't familiar with the Outreachy program, it's really amazing. There's a link there online. Where did I put it? Line 212. And Akshita is one of our Outreachy intern applicants. So thank you very much for making this call. And it looks like, Gay, we have one more topic here from Equitable Tech. Somebody want to speak to this?
I'm sorry, I had one question.
Yes, oh, sorry, I forgot to ask. Sorry about questions. Yes, please go ahead.
So, Akshita, I had you.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, my pronouns are she and her. The question I had was on you had brought up something on the blind code reviews.
Yes, blind code. Sorry.
You said that there was an issue with using blind code reviews in your situation.
No, there was not an issue. It was like a amazing experience for us for using Blind Review. It actually sorted quite things for using
Okay.
our applications further.
Oh, right. Outreach, he uses that. Is that what you're saying? Or
No, actually, I
okay.
meant like
The actual one. Oh, cool.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. Sorry, I thought there was that there was an issue with, and I wanted to make sure that that was captured as we're doing future work. So thank you. I'm glad y'all are having a good experience with the blind code reduced code. Cool.
That's great.
thank you.
Yay, making connections.
Yes, I'm also very happy.
Right. Did anyone else have any questions? Sorry to skip over the questions bit. If you do, you can add them on 215, and even again after this call, we'll check back. Equitable tech. Next topic. Alberto. Do we have Alberto here? Oh, there you are. I can see you waving. I can't hear you though. Still can't. So, Alberto, are you just having issues with your audio? Of course, there's like 7 different reasons why audio might not work, so I'm not sure what to suggest. Did you want me to just read from your Etherpad here, or would that be helpful? Okay, awesome. Let me just go back there. So, forking open hatch workshops at the minority serving institutions in USA. There's a couple links there on 223 and slides on 225. Definitely check these out. I can't speak to this project yet. I'm just starting to look at it, but I can tell you how much I enjoyed Open Hatch. So if the work they were doing to bring more people into open source contribution, and so if this is an evolution of that, I think it's worth everyone's glance to see how it might apply to our participation. Sorry again. Sorry about the audio. Next time, maybe. Oh. Now we can hear you.
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got an old Mac and the microphone may be going out. So sorry about that.
No worries.
Yes, so the Capeware Center has given me what they call GRIT grant to catalyze the activities that I've been researching for about 4 years. I've been going to Open Source Bridge, where I met representatives from Outreachy and Open Hatch. All Things Open, Scale, a bunch of conferences, learning to see what is happening in terms of diversity and open source. And this is building on the work that I've been doing at the doctoral level of STEM diversity, especially with an outcome of faculty diversity in academia. And so with this funding, I'm now able to kick off 2 potential activities. We're still kind of in pilot mode. And what I'm soliciting is volunteer facilitators to help with the first workshop, which will be Saturday, April 28th in Houston, Texas, with my partner, Texas Southern University, which is a HBCU, a historically Black college and university. And so the idea is to bring back the Open Hatch campus workshops, which the organization has closed. And so since all of their materials are online, it's a matter of just bringing it back. And the grant is allowing us to bring in Shauna Gordon-McKeon as a lead instructor for that workshop, and as well as a second one to be done in the fall at a Hispanic serving institution. I'm still in negotiations, but it'll probably be in Southern California. And so the facilitators is our bottleneck right now. My network is more in the LA area, where I am here in Southern California, and Shauna is on the East Coast. But what we're looking for are professionals who are contributing to active projects so that then not only can they help with the morning instruction of basics introductory information, but then to serve on a career panel where over lunch they would discuss what it's like to get into the tech industry. And then more importantly, in the afternoon, to sit one-on-one or with small groups of students to explain their own open source project to potentially start onboarding them, or at least getting them familiar with the communication tools, where to find the email listserv or the Slack channel or so on. But so we're just reaching out for this first pilot. But the idea is that in the future, we would have more regular events once we're able to establish a network and some fundraising to have a coordinator who would be able to manage more of these. Since this is still just a new project, I can't have too many projects this year, since my main activities are with that doctoral level project, which you can learn about at minoritypostdoc.org. Currently, that website is hosting the equitabletech.com page. Again, we're just still building capacity for a separate website and so on. But so I'm just thrilled to be able to let people here in this group know. I was previously at some other conferences where I'm meeting people in academia, like the Red Hat University Partnerships, POSSE, HFOS, and some of these other groups. And so I'm just trying to connect and publicize to learn as much as possible. Open source isn't my specific expertise. I'm more of a diversity practitioner, but I am really thrilled, though, to be able to initiate this.
It's great to have you here, and look forward to hearing more about your progress.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, more information can be found at the preprint. That the link that I have there on Figshare was a paper presented at the Respect and Special Interest Group in Computer Science Education Conference. It happened a couple of weeks ago. And then my presentation at the Kapor Center among the other GRIT grant awardees is the second link.
Thank you.
Hey,
Yep.
Alberto, I'm curious because one of the side projects I'm working on right now is developing a YouTube curriculum for people to get information on how to use Bugzilla, the Firefox project's main bug tracker in sort of bite-sized pieces. Are the learners and the participants that you're looking at are where are they going to find information on how to participate in projects?
It's at the moment.
Pardon?
Yeah. At the moment, we're just going to be repeating the Open Hatch curriculum as is, since we're just trying to start this. But there's definitely future opportunities to have other aspects, new type of curriculum, and so on. It just is going to be dependent upon our partnerships. But there's plenty of material already out there in terms of sort of how do you start. What's been missing and what I'm trying to develop is the relationship with these minority serving institutions.
Alberto, have you had a chance to connect with Christos, who runs the open source student network at Mozilla?
At the SIGSI, there was a presentation about the open source student clubs. And there's a bunch of names that were thrown around. I think that was one of them. They weren't present at that meeting, but I did meet some of the campuses who are running the clubs. But I'm still learning about all the different initiatives and the partnerships. Okay. I definitely want to give a shout out, since this will be viewed to other people, to Ashish Lauria, the founder, one of the co-founders of Open Hatch, definitely building upon his help. And then a number of diversity advocates who have helped me learn a lot by their efforts, especially Ash Dryden and AlterConf have benefited a lot from the work that she's done.
Yeah, well, plus one, those are people that have shown a lot of leadership to where we are right now. Thank you. I'll just add the open source in the question source student. If you're interested, they're doing a lot of similar or leveraging some of the work Open Hatch has done in the past. So mindful of time, that looks like it's our last topic. I'm just scrolling up to see if there's any questions. As I mentioned, we're going to try and move from Hangouts next time. Sorry for any issues that you've had connecting to this. Also, there's some comments around the accessibility and captioning. I do have a transcript afterwards, which I will add to the wiki. If you go, where's our wiki link? I will add the wiki link to the top of this Etherpad after this call, which will have links to transcripts. If you watch this call afterwards, please do add to the Etherpad. Next time, our next call is, I think it's May 6th, and it's going to be an all things code of conduct call. So we're going to be having a bunch of different speakers and topics related to really moving the needle, so to speak, on building healthy communities through enforcement and process of code of conducts. So I look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks so much for making this call. Have a lovely day. Thanks for all you do. Bye for now.